Hi everyone, now it comes to the actual task itself, the self-directed learning task. So provided that the units are designed within OneNote as has been described in previous clips, then really the task now is for students to progress through the objectives and answer these objectives by going through the rest of these pages or sub-pages and finding the answers to the objectives. Now they can also find information from other sources if they wish, although they should be encouraged to place those resources somewhere in OneNote for future reference as well. So they might need to, for example, look through PowerPoints to find some answers. They can use the websites, YouTubes, the textbook, although not here in this particular instance. It should be inserted as a printout that they have done that themselves. So really they move through at their own pace. Now, whether you do it for one lesson, two lessons, a week, a month is really depending on the ability of the class and the topics. Some more difficult topics don't really work so well with self-directed learning because you'll have to stop too often and explain important concepts. So it's really hard to say in which instances this approach will and will not work. In general, I've found it's more successful with older students in the senior school. Middle school students often lack the cognitive ability to I guess, regulate it and find their way through the information. Some students have the answer right in front of them on a PowerPoint slide or on a website, and they can't relate that back to the objective. And there's not much that really you can do about that. They just need to develop those skills themselves with more practice. Sometimes they'll figure that out by year 7, 8, 9 or year 10. Others, I certainly know of some adults that still can't really learn that way. So it's the approach, it does lend itself to certain topics as well that are probably a bit more simple. The students, the better students can then move ahead into extension topics. The students that struggle in any topic, then they can go through it a bit more slowly, and you can spend more time with those students, helping them out with some key concepts. So really the key to this self-directed learning approach within the OneNote is the objectives have to be thorough and they have to be detailed, and you must provide resources. So the objectives and the resources are the key. If you provide very vague objectives, for example, if these 22 objectives were compressed into say 5 or 6, then it would be difficult for a lot of students to know the depth to which they have to answer the objectives. And even with the 22 objectives here, some students might answer this objective here, for example, in one line. Others might write a paragraph. So an improvement to what I've got here would be to give a brief guide of how long each answer should be. So and that will just give the students obviously an outline of, or an idea of, what they should be aiming at. The really good students will obviously go into a lot more detail, just naturally. That's the habits of mind that they are into. But this, another example, this answer here, you could answer that in 2 words or 2 sentences or a paragraph. A good student would find maybe a website link to put in there and put a sketch and with a reference and a bit of an explanation. But a D or an E standard student would just maybe answer it in 2 words. So the self-directed learning approach allows students to choose the learning style that suits them the best, and it allows the teacher to spend more time with the students that actually need it to cover the core information. That's not to say you're ignoring the better students, because they can also go into extension topics and other, they could have other activities in there as well. So this is one approach to the self-directed learning task with this with the unit set up over here on the right, as I've discussed in previous clips. There is one other approach that you can use, which takes a bit more time to set up. So just showing you this one here. This is a year 9 unit on layers of the earth. So sorry, it's an earth science unit, and it's got a similar setup over here on the right, but what is a bit different is that the topics are broken up into layers of the earth. You can see just little subtopics really. Alright, it's more work to set up, but the difference in this approach is within each subtopic the PowerPoint is already embedded within there, and the objectives are cut and pasted and placed within the subtopic. So students can really just type their answer straight into here, okay, rather than doing it in the objectives page. So I found this approach has worked quite well, and this topic lends itself to self-directed learning because it's not too difficult. The structure of the Earth, Earth science, volcanoes, etc. So breaking it up into subtopics, and within each subtopic placing resources makes it a bit easier in the sense that students don't have to search as much for the resources, and it keeps the answers relevant to that particular subpage. So that's an alternative approach to the generic template that I used before. It does take more work to set this up though, going through and cutting and pasting and putting all the resources and the objectives in the subtopics takes a bit more time, but that's another way to do it. So yeah, the self-directed learning approach in the middle school, from what I found, really a lesson or two is the most it would generally work at, allowing students to explore on their own. After that, you really need to start bringing it back together, and even at the end of each lesson, bringing it back to a focus and discussing the main points that students should have got out of the lessons. You can even put your own objectives in here as well, answer the objectives. So students, if they didn't get the answer, they can see the answer and put it in themselves. Yeah, it's an approach that I'll continue to use with some classes and some units. It's certainly not something you can just throw at any class in any year, but it's an approach that is worth considering at the very least for the classes that you teach, or whether you're teaching in whatever classes that may be, or tertiary or secondary school, or even within businesses if there's applications in that as well. All right, thank you.